sketch or drawing is good. And
Okay.
just a reminder, the differences between the two: sketch paper's typically thinner, lighter, and drawing paper is typically a little bit heavier weight. That's the difference between the two. Also, hi, Susan.
Hi.
I officially say hi to you, so I just wanted to make sure I did. And then they do make pastel paper, which often comes in different tones. You can get it in a whole range of different tones, different browns and tans and grays, and I mean, even colors. You can even get blues. I mean, it's almost like looking at mat board, which I say that because some of you have showed me mats with color. So I know that some of you know about that. So it's like, they have all these range of colors, and they typically have like more tooth or texture to like hold the pastel and allow you to layer the pastel, which creates more depth. So that's the purpose of that paper. And using that paper will enhance your results depending. And I mean, you can get hyper realistic with like, especially the soft chalk pastels. But the other thing I'll say is pastels is like, when you're choosing to use them, think about the style of drawing you want to do. You know, a lot of times it's a little bit looser, you're seeing your lines, it's more expressive, but it could be blended as well. So, I mean, as always, there's a range of things you can do with it. But I always think, you know, if I want something super controlled, I'm probably not going to choose a pastel. I'm probably going to choose like a Prismacolor, where I can have it really sharp and get in there and get those edges. If I'm choosing pastel, I'm choosing it because I want that quality of a pastel. I'm choosing it for that reason. So I pulled a few things, and these are ones I highly recommend and I use in school. So for oil pastels, this is the Craypas Expressionist. This is such a good deal. These are not that expensive, the Craypas Expressionist. And you can get them in different, backwards for me, there's the number. So this is 25 colors, but you can get them in different sets. And I want to say this is only about $7. And I got it from Blick. Maybe I'm wrong and it was a little bit more than that, but it wasn't that pricey. And I did link this in the blog or our club homepage at one point. And I'll just to kind of show you these. And you get a nice range of color, and they are a little bit thicker, but you can of course peel the paper off as you use them up. Okay. Has everyone used oil pastels before, or is there someone that oil pastels is brand new?
Never.
Lori, Brandy, never. Cheryl. Okay, cool.
Brand new.
Just asking. Cool, that's great.
So
And again,
can I show you something? This is
yeah,
I don't even know where I got these. And can you see it?
Ooh, is that looks like does it say it's water soluble on it?
Yes. It says water soluble waxed pastels.
Those are awesome. So it's like a watercolor pencil meets oil pastel kind of. Oh. So you can draw with it and then take a brush, dip it in water, and it blends and turns to paint. They're lovely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where I got them.
Yeah, and you could even like hold it, take your brush to it, and if you like took a wet brush to it, you'd pull color off from it, if that makes sense.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's a good find. Yeah, and then this set is a little bit pricier, but amazing. The Faber-Castell. This is these are pastel pencils. Just show you, there's one that's not in here. A student probably never put it back, but there's the range of colors in this set. Now here's the advantage of a pastel pencil. You get the control of a colored pencil, but you get the blendability of a pastel. So it's a little bit more precise. You can still sharpen it with the hand sharpener, get a really sharp point, get in there, get fine details. So if that's your thing. And of course, you can mix this with what I have here. These are just square pastels. Oops, there we go. And this is Blick. Blick is, I order from them a lot. They're based out of Illinois, but they I like their brand itself is usually pretty decent for the price. So this is their brand. And then this, I mean, your pastels just don't stay pretty for long. I just always have to stress that they just don't. So, I mean, these have been used, but you can see the colors. This is not wax. Almost imagine chalky. This is like a chalky feeling.
Okay.
So this you can mix with these pencils. So sometimes you could do looser things with this and then come in with more details with this, and you can mix and match the two. So, you know, just some different things you can do with the types of pastels. And I always say, you know, just be prepared to get your hands a little dirty. That's just the nature of pastels. You get a little dirty with it. Some of my students just, they cannot handle that. I mean, I'm sure you all don't mind. I mean, if you're all artists, you probably don't mind. I don't mind, but it stresses them out. They don't like to get their hands dirty. I'm like, come, it's good for you. Get your hands dirty.
Well, I agree with them. I don't like the chalky. It's sort of the tactile
texture.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So,
that I understand. That is a real thing for sure. And especially the chalk, like if you think, sorry if this is too much, but the chalk on the nail, you know, or sorry, I said it backwards. Yeah. Nails on the chalkboard.
Oh.
My brain. You know, that sound or that feeling of chalk. For some people, I get that. A texture thing can be totally real. That's different. That's an exception to the rule, Lee. I will allow that. You're welcome. So some other tools that are helpful are paper towel. I always like to have a paper towel because you can smudge and blend with this so you don't get your fingers dirty and you don't feel it so much. Lee, here's something you could do if you're ever using a piece of pastel and you don't like this feeling. Take a paper towel and just make yourself a little, you know, and then you're not feeling it so much. That might be nicer for you.
Somebody had also suggested those little things that you can put on your fingers.
Yes, I think, did Mark mention that?
Finger cut.
Yes. Right,
yeah, those are nice for sure. And then of course you can use blending stumps for pastels as well. It's just, I always keep them separate, and I just realized I need to order some. I have like 2, so I need to be like Susan and order some. And then if you don't have that, you could always use a good old Q-tip. You know, most people have those in their house, I feel like. So that works. The only thing is sometimes it lifts more than you want. So you just have to kind of be a little gentle with them. Cool. So that's all supplies wise. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch my camera over. And now I realize we all have different supplies. So depending on, you know, what you have, you can sort of kind of follow along or kind of take some notes or jot things down or, you know, kind of whatever you need to do. And then we can do more pastel classes later too. My thought is, when it's such a brand new medium for most people, sometimes it's nice to just get a little info before you're like, oh, I'm going to go buy this, or, you know, you can kind of see what it does. So I'll start with the oil pastels and then I'll go to the chalk pastels. So depending on what you have, oil pastels, there is one thing you can do with these that's pretty cool. You can get like a solvent, like imagine or like a baby oil. The only thing is baby oil sometimes will leave a ring on your paper, of course, because it's oil. So you can get other kinds of solvents. They make like art specific solvents. You can find them at art stores, and you can actually blend oil pastel with it. So that's kind of a fun thing you can do with it. But just, you know, I thought I would just kind of start with some just basic techniques just to kind of show you what the quality of oil pastels looks like. And again, they'll never look this pretty. They get real dirty real fast. It's just the nature of them. But the thing with oil pastels is they kind of, when you're just kind of shading with them like this, I'll just do kind of like a blue and a blue. So they definitely have this kind of oily kind of texture to them. But the thing that you can do with them is you could, for example, take some paper towel and I can blend them and soften them, which creates a whole just other look completely. Okay, and then I could do that with this one too. Okay, so something like that. And you can blend them down, but then you can continue to add more layers on top. Okay, so like most art materials, you know, we're learning about layering. That's a huge thing. So we can keep on layering, and then we can do things that sort of manipulate. So for example, actually, I'm going to do a different color. So I'm going to take just a light green. I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I'm going to take a light green and blend it, and then I'll put, I'm going to put some blue on top. I just want the colors to contrast for what I'm going to show you, because it looks better when they contrast. I mean, you could do subtle texture as well, but for the example, I think it'd be cool to show you something a little bit more dramatic. So I did some light green, blended that with a paper towel. I can take some blue and layer that on top. And I just have a paper clip here, okay? Just a little paper clip. You could use anything that's kind of scratchy, like a little wooden skewer, you know, an ink pen that's run out of ink that no longer writes, but you could still scratch with the tip. And you can do the sgraffito technique. So if you've been in some of the painting classes, you've heard about sgraffito, and sgraffito is just where we're etching. So you can scratch oil pastel away and reveal what's underneath. And then you can start layering and creating all these cool little patterns. You can play with lines, but you can use any kind of tool you can scratch with, anything. You could even use like an edge of a palette knife, or the back of a paintbrush, or anything that you maybe have on hand, and you can create texture. So, I mean, imagine like drawing into it. You can create like little fur. You could, you know, imagine like a tree trunk and then etching out lines for the trunk, or, you know, grass, anything like that. It's very, you can scratch it. The other thing that's really fun with pastels is kind of like stippling or pointillism style, or you can even do some kind of optical mixing, but even kind of just dotting series of colors together that are sort of similar can be really, really fun and a cool thing to do. And again, optical mixing would be something like, let's say you wanted to make green. Instead of just doing green, you can layer blue and yellow dots together. So our mind sort of creates the green. So it's a technique. So this kind of dotting effect can be really fun, you know, and then you can even play around and sort of maybe kind of blend some of them together a little bit to kind of create different sort of blurs. I mean, blending is really great. I think landscapes are really fun to do with pastels because of the blendability. You can do really fun skies and things like that. Yeah. That's just, you know, you could sort of blend. I could keep layering if I wanted to. You know, just imagine like we'll do kind of like just an easy little sunset. You know, imagine you're kind of going some red. And it's nice, you almost like feel like you're using a crayon at first. You know, you can be kind of loose. Pastels definitely make me feel like a kid. I used to have a love-hate relationship with them, in the sense that the lack of control really frustrated me when I was younger. But then as I started to use them more, I just started to appreciate what they can do that other materials can't. And they're so fun to like layer with gouache, or you can draw. Oil pastel like pops on gouache or shows up on, you know, really dark paper and things like that. So you can play around. In fact, sometimes I think it looks better on the color paper than it does on white. But, you know, if you layer colors like this and just kind of, you can blend them together. So I'm going to blend one half but not the other, just so you can kind of see, okay, that transition. And it does kind of wipe some away, like I said would happen. And I used kind of a lot of pressure. But then what I can do is I can layer a little bit more on top. Because again, layering is good. You know, I'm not sure why some people, you know, some people just want the art to be done in one layer. They just want to like paint this, this, and this, it's done. And a lot of that's, you know, we can't create depth that way. So think about layering, and you can even let the colors overlap a little bit. And you can blend. You can bring the yellow down a little bit more. Kind of lost the yellow there. But, you know, and the more you layer, the more blend you're going to get. And then you could do things like, you know, maybe I'm going to draw on top, you know, the pastel just pops right on top and shows up and is nice and graphic. And you can draw, you know, different things. Give a little tree. You know, even, let's see how the white shows up. And just kind of a tip, like whatever student used this last, you know, tried to mix this white with a color. So what I do is you can just take it on some paper and it cleans it off, okay? So I just usually have a little scrap paper that I'll put the extra oil pastel on, you know, but you could, I don't know how well this white will show up, but yeah. You can even kind of lighten areas, put some white in there, gives it a more pastel-y kind of color. So you can mix, you can layer. They do make colorless blenders as well for oil pastels. See what that does. Kind of purple, red, and white. So yeah, so those are just kind of some little basics, things you can do with oil pastels. And of course, you can, you know, mix colors on the paper too. So you could start with one color and you can customize your colors, of course, by just layering them on top. So just kind of like Prismacolors or paint, you know, they're very blendable when you start layering, and you can manipulate colors. And you just really, you can keep layering and layering and layering. And then I'll just show you, here's like the Q-tip. So it did wipe a little bit off. The blender, I mean, the blender, to be honest, just works so much better. And to be honest, a lot of times, I talked about this with painting too, sometimes we don't need to always blend so much, but we want to create an illusion of blending too, which is done through layering as well. So that's kind of some little basics on oil pastels. Let's take a look at the chalk. And I think that's what most of you have, is you have soft pastels, or a version of a soft pastel, I think. So the soft pastel, of course, there's different ways you can use them depending on what you're trying to do. You know, if you've got the whole side, you can actually tone your entire paper and create like a background. So if you don't have toned paper, that's fine. You can create your own tone. And I can just kind of blend it in like this. Okay. So this is one way you can create something like that. And actually, I'm going to grab an eraser really quick just to show you. You can erase a little bit. It's not going to erase quite fully. Actually, it is erasing better than I thought. Okay, so you could think of like a subtractive method with erasing as a technique with the chalk pastel, okay, which can be kind of fun. But then, of course, you can layer as well, or you can use the edges to draw thinner shapes. Okay, so you can kind of use them multiple ways, creating big areas of kind of blended color, or just using them to create, excuse me, some smaller, you know, little shapes.
Now, what would you put over there if you wanted to keep that, like, you know, those squigglies like they are?
If you want to keep them just like this and you don't want them to budge? Is that your question? Yes. Okay. Great question. Let me see if I have that sitting in here. You are going to use fixative spray, which I always, oh, there it is. It's right in front of me. Guys, I'm losing stuff. Okay. So I'm going to really, actually, I'm just putting it under here and show you. So this is fixative. I highly recommend getting some of this if you don't have it. gonna be about $6 or $7 a can. It's gonna last you quite a while. I recommend when you're done with all your pencil drawings, color pencil drawings, even chalk, you can spray this over top of it. So I usually just take it outside, set it in the grass, shake it up really good, and just kind of spray it. I don't even tell you how far away. Let's see. Does it tell you? Oh yeah, 6 to 9 inches away from your surface. And then usually it's about 10 to 15 minutes to dry. And workable means you can keep adding to this. It doesn't mean your drawing has to be done. It means you can use this anytime you want to set something. But once you use this, it's set. Okay? So that's the thing to keep in mind. Like if I was like, ooh, this is good, I don't want this to budge, I don't want to change anything else, I could spray it and then keep adding to it. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yes.
Did I answer your question? Cool. Yeah, so this is a great thing to get. If you, here's another thing you can use in a pinch is Aquanet hairspray. Aquanet hairspray specifically will do the same thing. And that's what I used to use in high school instead of fixative, because I actually didn't know about real fixative until I got to college. So yeah, hairspray will work. If you happen to be at the grocery store and you see some Aquanet, that'll, you know, that's usually pretty cheap. So yeah, so pastels, you can, oops, let's see how well Sgraffito will work. It's like sometimes it's hit or miss depending on the type of pastel. Yeah, Sgraffito's not going to work so much. So that's going to be one of your biggest differences between these two types of pastels, between your oil and your chalk, is you're not going to be able to scratch, or you're not going to be able to create as much texture with the material per se. Hopefully that makes sense. But if you try both of them out, you kind of get that sense. And then of course, like these little pencils, same, oh, that one doesn't show up very well at all. Let's try this color, there we go. So you can see, obviously you've got control over it, but it's still pastel inside the pencil. Okay, it's just obviously that pencil casing gives us that control, which is really, really nice. So what I'll show you guys, just kind of, I think a couple fun exercises to try. When, regardless of what kind of pastel you have, I think this is just a fun thing to try to just kind of practice your blending. So maybe grab, if you've got a color, grab any color you've got. And I'll use chalk because I think that's what most of you have. But if you have, Cheryl, if you are trying it like with your oil kind of style, that's totally fine too. The idea is kind of the same.
Okay.
So the first thing we're going to do is just pick, let's pick a couple colors. Let's pick 3 colors. One for a background that we're going to do. We'll just do a little square. So I'm just going to take, we're going to do a little sphere. We're just going to shade a little sphere to practice with our pastel. So take one color, draw yourself a little square or rectangle, and fill it in. So you can use it on its side or kind of the tip, and then just kind of blend it out. And this is just a little exercise, just something to get us going. And then I'll give you another little thing you can try. We'll kind of do something a little bit more realistic-ish and a little bit more abstract and expressive. So a couple things for you to practice. And I think practicing technical skills along with skills that help our creativity, both things are good. So I think they go hand in hand and help us develop our ideas. A little something like that. Does not need to be totally perfect. All right. And then go ahead and pick 2, or actually we're going to pick, yeah, 2 other colors. So one is going to be the color of your sphere. and one is going to be the color of the table we're going to make. And for your sphere, I'm going to do green. Okay, so I'm going to lay out my colors. I'm going to pull green, and I happen to have a couple greens, so I'm going to use a couple greens. If you only have one kind of your color, that's fine. If you have multiples and want to pull some multiples, I think it's just fun to have multiple colors. That's why I'm doing this. But it could just as easily be one. So, and again, the reason I gave this a background is so is this if we're drawing on toned paper already, okay? And then if you have a white and a black, you could also grab those because you can darken and lighten with your white and a black, but you could also darken with a complement. So I could also pull like a little bit of red to darken my greens. Just depends. And of course, you can always do samples. For example, I could be like, I could always try all my colors out and make sure. So I'm going to try a little bit of this red in here and mix that and darken that. And then I could try like a little bit of, oops, I didn't mean to do red again. I could try a little bit of my green with my black. So this is, again, just a quick little example. You can try colors out. You can mix them outside of what you're doing so you can kind of experiment with them. And that's something a lot of artists do before they just choose. Because if you pick a color, especially with pastels, sometimes it's, you know, you got to work with what you do sometimes. So that's why testing out can be helpful. So I'm going to take my white, or you could use your green, and I'm just going to draw a little sphere for myself. And it doesn't have to end up being realistic or anything like that. It could, you know, just kind of be a fun little expressive. You could crosshatch, you can scribble. I'll probably keep mine pretty expressive, to be honest with you, because again, it's the nature of pastel to kind of have some of that expression in there. But you can blend it out really smooth too. So if, let's just imagine our light's coming from here. So I'm going to have a cast shadow coming out from here, and then I'm just going to see a little tabletop. So just a little something like that is fine. And I can even sort of blend this in a little bit, this shape, so it's not so, you know, stark. So what I need to do is I can start with sort of my mid range. Okay, and I can just start to put some of this pastel. And just kind of like we've talked about in some other classes, think about that contour, that curve. We don't want to flatten this out. We don't want to shade this way. We don't want to shade this way. Okay, we want to follow these. Now you could certainly kind of scribble or scumble, but think about that curve. You know, and depending what method you have to blend, you can of course blend with your finger. You could blend with a Q-tip. But I kind of take that initial layer and just kind of start to blend that out a little bit. And, you know, think about where that highlight, you know, we're kind of making this up. We're not actually looking at a picture, but, you know, we've got a highlight coming in, and it's going to get darker as we go back. So now I can start kind of layering this pastel. And this is also where I can certainly mix in some other colors. Doesn't have to be, oops, this edge. Does not have to be one color by any means. So sometimes it's fun to add some extra color into the mix. You know, maybe you can use a lighter version of the color as you start to get toward the highlight. If you don't have a lighter version of the color, then that's where you can just sort of blend it to lighten it, or you could mix white with the color to lighten it as well. And then if you just sort of kind of cross hatch, kind of move your pastel in different directions, you can sort of blend just by making these lines and kind of work colors into each other. You could always add a little black if you want, or red, depending on what I'm just going with. Actually, this might be gray. Usually the black pastels, I don't know, they get used up really fast. Actually, this might be black. You could also darken with some brown. It just, you know, again, it depends what colors you want to use. Experiment with it. There's not one recipe. But the point is we can kind of play with this value going from dark to light. Then I can bring some white in for my highlight. This is the fun part. I love getting to use actual white. That's why we toned it. Okay, so I can actually use white then. Okay, I could blend a little with a Q-tip. Okay, but this white, getting to see this white, just getting to see that highlight really helps it pop. So then what we're gonna do, so I asked you to pick another color. Let's see, what color do I want to use? I'm going to use this kind of dark red. I'm just going to go complementary because complementary I think pops. So I'm going to use this dark red and I'm going to shade around the back of this. This is where like the pencils come in handy, I think, because these edges sometimes get a little tricky. Getting them nice and close. But again, you can kind of outline a little bit because you can always blend that out. If I can just shade this on. Again, this makes it look less outlined, kind of makes it pop a little bit more. Okay. Something like that. Now, when we're looking down here, it depends what color you make this to determine, to my camera, what color you make this. So if you have a brown table, like I just imagine like a wood table, you know, or something like I even have right here, you're gonna have brown in that, as well as maybe some green, depending if this is kind of shiny and reflective or not, okay? So that's why I didn't shade this yet. It's not necessarily just black. It's not also just green. It's gonna determine what color we make this. So if I wanted to just keep this like a gray, but maybe just darken it a little bit, I'll just kind of do that because it's neutral. I've already got a red and a green. For me, I don't want to add a third color for now, although, you know, you could. Blue could look nice. I just, you know, sometimes I like having a neutral when I've got a couple colors just because neutrals give us a break, let our eyes rest. So I'm just going to shade this in. And again, sometimes pastel's nice because you don't always have to like shade in the same direction. You can just kind of almost scribble it in a little bit and then blend it out. So that can be kind of nice and relaxing. Or not, depending on who you are. Let's blend it out. So then, because I did a darker gray shadow, I did that on purpose. So then I can take, again, I don't have a black in there. I'm gonna have to use the black pencil because I don't have a black chalk pastel. But I'm gonna take the black pencil and just kind of start defining this. And then I could put just like a little green. I'm just gonna smudge in a little green and then put the black over top of that green. It's pretty subtle. to blend a little bit. And I did lost my edge a little bit here. Got a little, there we go. So sometimes you gotta go back in with that pastel a little bit. Sometimes it moves around on you. That can be the frustrating part. Some people feel like they, you know, like they're continually redoing things, but the fixative can help. Add just a little bit more white. I just like to see that pop, that contrast. And then, you know, I could put a little bit more green in here if I wanted to, depending on how reflective that surface is going to be. Darken it just a little bit. And then the last thing you'd do is you'd have a little bit of reflected light on your actual surface. So you can take just a little pop of white and just place it right along the bottom. So again, when we just get a little bounce back of light. And of course that looks different depending on the object. Obviously we're just making this up. But when you're looking at something, you can just usually see that in person. So yeah, that's just, you know, this doing little things like this, I think is just good practice. You start to get comfortable with the pastel, but then, you know, you can also do things where you're, you know, I could even put some blue in here. You know, you can start having fun with your color as well. It doesn't have to be just one thing. So, you know, kind of have fun with that and play around, try the different forms. I think that's a really good thing to do. And then the next thing, maybe I'll use my toned paper just to show you another little activity you can try that is, I think, really fun and relaxing. Also, I should just show you, look at my fingers, pastels. So yeah, so this little activity, there's a couple ways you can do it. Way number one is if you happen to have like magazines with like some kind of pattern or some kind of design or shape, you can cut out a little square. You could either glue it on your page or you could look at it and draw what you see and then add on to it. So you have a starting point, or you can just design your own starting point. So, and this is, you can just start with pastels. You can do pencil first, but I often like to just do pastels so I kind of maintain the material so I don't see pencil in it. But what you can do is just start off with a shape, any shape. I'm gonna almost do kind of like a moon shape. I'm gonna purposely kind of curve it. It's gonna be pink. I'm gonna fill it in. And this you could easily do with oil or chalk. It does not matter. In fact, most often I've done it with oil. So I thought I would do it with chalk to change it up. Okay. Ooh, that's really bright on the screen now that I'm looking at it on the screen. Now with that same color, go somewhere else on your page and draw another shape. It could be the same shape or a different shape. Or it could be the same, or you could change the size. But go ahead and use that same color again. Right? And then go ahead and let's use it another time. Okay. Now go ahead and pick a color that you think complements this, whether it's similar, like for example, I go just to a slightly darker pink, but it's close. Or I want to go contrasty and go with like a blue or like a little turquoise or something like that. Okay, so you pick your color, whatever you want. Then pick one of your shapes and draw a shape around that shape. So I'm going to draw a circle around this circle and just make it a little bit thicker. All right. Go ahead and draw just a brand new shape with this color. It can touch one of the other ones, or it can just be on its own. All right, go ahead and pick a color that is this, well, let me see. No, I'm not gonna tell you this because it could be different for everyone. Okay, pick a third color that you think complements your entire design. You just pick any color that you think looks good. Okay, now with this color, go ahead and pick one of your shapes and just draw some lines through it. I'll do this one. And go ahead and draw, you could draw a shape with this color. All right, think we're going to add one more color into this mixture, and then make sure you've got your colors you were using, because we'll kind of go back to them. So I think I'm going to go with a neutral. I'm going to go with black as my last color. So with black, or whatever last color you're choosing, go ahead and either draw a shape with it if you feel like more shapes would look good, or go ahead and outline something with it if you think outlining would look good. You pick. I'm going to outline. And I'm going to outline something else. So really, guys, the directions I gave you didn't even matter at all. I just wanted you to start drawing something. Didn't even matter. I'm not trying to get you to do anything particular. I just want you to start drawing. That was the whole point of it. Sometimes we just need to start making marks on the paper. I just realized this looks like a smiley face. That's funny. Sometimes we just need to make marks on the paper and start drawing something and let it evolve and transform. So with those same colors, I want you to just start repeating shapes, or draw new shapes if you are into some new shapes, but try to fill your space. Try to think about repeating colors and creating balance. So if I have, that's why I asked you to repeat that same color multiple times. That is why I asked you to do that, because I think it's good to have repetition in our colors. It helps create a sense of unity. And this is just a very basic thing that we're doing here. It's something I've done with high school students, middle school students, elementary students, and adults. And the reason being is it's just about exploring the material and just kind of seeing what you can do with it and what types of patterns or designs you could come up with. How can you take these separate things you've done now and somehow create something that brings them together? What could you do to help unify it? So a couple things happen. It's teaching you about composition, but it's teaching you about, using this material. You could do things like layering. Maybe I kind of want to play up this whole kind of eye thing, but kind of go abstract. And it just allows you to see what this medium can do. Because sometimes I think before you start doing anything, you need to take some time and just explore. You know, before we go and create all these masterpieces, right, and all these kind of polished, refined things, we have to remember to play. And I think for me, that's why I like pastels, is because you know, it's reminiscent to me of chalk and a crayon, and it makes me feel like a kid, which is good because then you've got that kind of sense of wonder. You're trying things. And you know, you can do things too. So let's try, here's another challenge we could try. If you have two colors that would work well together, could you create some sort of blend through your drawing? So maybe I'm gonna have like just kind of a wave come through here and maybe go from one color to the next. So, you know, I'll just kind of practice some little skills and techniques. That can be a great way to bring something together. So I'm going to create this blend. And you could certainly play with both oil and chalk at the same time if you happen to have both. They don't necessarily blend together, but they can be interesting on the same composition. So one of the things I would love to do, kind of a little class series on pastels, is I think a great way to learn, I say this with a lot, is but animals or landscapes. So I'll be putting together some, actually I shouldn't use my fingers because they're really dirty with some other colors. I'm gonna use this. I'm just gonna kind of start blending this together, and then I'll add some more layers to it. But you will find it helpful to wash your hands a lot too if they are getting dirty, so you're not smudging things and getting other colors. But sorry, back to what I was saying. I will put together a class series on where we'll do a full kind of drawing together with oil pastels or chalk pastels, depending on what the preference is. But again, I just think doing things like this is just a great way to start to get the hang of a material. Like, how many blends could you create? You know, so now that adds something interesting. Now I've got a blend, not just flat color. So maybe I can sort of create some contrast by having a little bit of both. And you know, if you're using oil pastels, you could do the scratching and things like that too, which can be really fun. I just think, you know, what can I continue to add to this to make it, I'm kind of liking these kind of darker outlines, kind of separating my sections. Almost reminds me of Zentangles a little bit. So I'm gonna add in these dark lines. I like that. I'm gonna put them around this too. To me, dark kind of outliney lines are just, they're graphic or sort of cartoony or designy, which this is kind of what this type of drawing is. It's a design, right? We're not necessarily drawing anything unless maybe you chose to. But sometimes I think getting into just designs and shapes and lines and blending is a good way to focus on a material, because you're playing with the material and not worrying about, oh, does this look like this thing? Another good thing to sort of practice is go to the internet and just search different texture pictures and try to recreate texture with your pastel. That can be really fun, kind of like we did with the colored pencils if you were in that class. That can be a really fun exercise. You know, and maybe I even want to do something where I've got these kind of bigger blocks or blobs of color. I could sort of almost kind of create just different shapes and layers. Just kind of create a background. And again, I'm just kind of repeating these colors to help just create unity. I'm just kind of exploring and just seeing what I can come up with. Just kind of blue into it. I'm adding another blue. It's just a lighter blue. You know, and again, I could kind of take these and blend them together a little bit if I wanted to. You know, one thing too I should mention is you can always do things where you're taking a color and just with like a blender or a Q-tip, you can like do a little fade out too, which can be really pretty. So a little something like that. But yeah, I could just kind of keep going with this, keep adding to it, and just kind of playing around with the pastels. So I think depending on, again, what your style is, playing around with things like this is just going to help you discover the material, get used to it, feel comfortable, understand how to blend, understand how to layer, understand how to create little textures on top of blended areas and so forth. Whereas doing exercises like this are going to help you render things more specifically. So, you know, that's why I wanted to show you both, because it just depends where your skills are at and where you feel comfortable, you know, because they're both good things to practice and they're teaching you something different, I think. So, you know, I just wanted to leave you and give you some things to kind of experience and play around with. So when I do some more pastel classes, we can kind of dive in a little bit more and you feel a little bit more comfortable with it because you've had some exposure to it and you've gotten to play around with it. So so I'm going to, let's see here. That's not what I wanted to